So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan again, and today I'm going to be showing you the first part of me moving my RV gate forward at my house. Ever since I got the larger fifth wheel, the longer fifth wheel, it's been kind of a pain to get it back in my yard where I want it. So I'm going to be eliminating this part of my wall, moving my gate all the way up to here. Now I dug the footer, installed the steel post and the cinder block here. I'm going to show you that part of this in this video. In the next video, I will be building a one-piece gate. And then in the last video, I will be installing an electric gate opener. So that's the plan, and let's get to it. So this is actually going to widen my gate another foot and also make it a straight shot to back the fifth wheel in. So if you're not planning on doing a one-piece gate, the cinder block will hold plenty of weight to do a double gate. So I removed the gravel and then started digging my hole for the post. The first 2 foot went pretty quick. This last foot, because I'm going 3 foot deep, has been kind of a pain, and the best way I found is you need to break up the dirt with a stake or use a hammer to punch a stake down into the ground and then move it around to kind of break up the dirt, and then you can use the post hole digger to remove the dirt from the hole. Trying to just use the post hole digger proved largely ineffective. It might have just been how compacted my dirt was around my house. Now there is a cinder block down below this, but I'm going to put my first cinder block level with this right here. I'm going to build the concrete up because my dirt pretty much covers that anyways. And obviously I need to match the height of the existing wall that is already there. So here's where my cinder block is going to go. So I dug that down about a foot. My hole is about 40 inches deep. I'm going to put a little bit of concrete in there, a cinder block to hold the weight of the post while the concrete dries. So then I tapered out to my extension footer that I dug here. It's about 10 inches wide, 10 inches deep, and that is going to be right underneath the gate when it's in its normally closed position. So I use this to mix the concrete. It's just easier for me to move the concrete around than a shovel. So I used 80-pound bags of concrete, mixed it with water until I had a pretty wet consistency because I wanted it to fill in all the gaps in the hole that I dug. Then I put a couple shovelfuls of concrete in the hole, placed my brick in the hole to support the weight of the 4-inch by 4-inch, quarter-inch thick steel post until the rest of the concrete in the hole finishes drying. This is 6 inches to here, but this is 2 inches. So that's my 8 inches for my cinder block. And then this is 2 inches plus my 14 inches equals the 16 inches that the cinder block is long. So I put this in the corner, and that's basically right where my post needs to be. So I mixed up one more bag of concrete and dumped it in the hole to help support the post while I leveled it. So I'm measuring the top gap here. I'm going to cut a piece of wood so I can clamp this to the wall. So I forgot to show you guys a picture when I was actually doing it, so I figured I'd show you now. This is a bar clamp that I used, and then I just put a block of wood the same distance that I wanted to hold it at and clamped it in place until it was done drying. So I stabbed a couple pieces of rebar down in the concrete to help strengthen the footer before adding the next barrel of concrete. So I grabbed a bunch of miscellaneous rebar and I just added little pieces between every bag of concrete. It just adds strength to your footer. So also between each barrel of concrete, I took a piece of rebar and just stabbed the concrete. It works the air bubbles out of the concrete to make a stronger mix. Ideally, it would have been an electric vibrator, but this will work just fine for small projects like this. So I went ahead and welded 4 pieces of rebar to the post, 2 of them going out towards the extension footer that I put in to help with the leverage of the gate when it's in the closed position. Now this is probably overkill, but since I had a welder, I figured I'd do it. So I made a little dam for the concrete because I wanted it to be higher over here than it is over here because of the way my grade is in my front yard. So I built up the concrete until it was about 3/8 of an inch below the first brick that I wanted to lay, so I have room for my mortar gap. So I shoved 2 more long pieces of rebar down into the concrete to increase the strength of the cinder block. So I had some leftover concrete after finishing the footer, so I went ahead and put it inside the post. to add strength as well. So I let that sit for about 10 hours, and then I went ahead and pulled the wood out and started laying my first brick. So I've got my mortar mix here, and I did it kind of thick because I needed to put about a 3/8 gap for the first brick to make it even with the other wall. I wanted to do the bottom brick because of the thick layer of mortar I had to lay, and I wanted to let it dry before putting the weight of the other 8 bricks on top of it. So it's the next morning, guys. Everything's looking good, drying up good. Excuse the pink paint. It was just something I used basically for a primer. It's what I had. Obviously, when I'm done, it'll match the brick. So with your mortar mix, you just slowly put in water until you get your proper mixture. Take a little scoop here. You just barely want it to stay there when it's on its side there. So that's a pretty good mix right there. I did go a little bit of a stiffer mix for that first layer just because I was making it thicker. I was trying to get it to the same level as the other brick. So bear in mind, this is probably only my 3rd or 4th time doing mortar, so I wasn't the quickest at it, but it did come out pretty good in the end. These bricks have a top and a bottom. This is kind of like a handle if you notice the thicker side versus the thinner side. So your thicker side is your top. If you go to my channel and look up DIY cinder block horseshoe pit, I go into a little bit more detail of how to do the cinder block and the mortar. So if interested, check it out. Now, one thing I did not realize is that cinder block apparently comes in different heights. So by the time I stacked my 8 bricks up, I came up short as far as the height of the wall. You can notice it right here. And unfortunately, the only thing I could come up with that would work is add a couple extra caps to the top to even it up, because I could not do that thick of a mortar gap between my cinder blocks. So keep that in mind when you're going to do something like this if you're trying to match existing brick. So since I don't have the patience for a little shovel to fill this cinder block up, I'm filling this 5-gallon bucket. I'm gonna dump the bucket in there. And I did a very wet mixture of concrete to make it easier. So I got those completely filled up, and now I just gotta lay the caps on. So I did the whole top of this in mortar because I've had a couple caps on some of my other walls at previous houses come off on me. So I wanted to make sure this would stick really, really well. Once again, I used my level and a rubber mallet just to tap it down into place and make sure it was level. So I'm sure they make a tool to do your mortar gap between the bricks, but I found just a glove with my finger works just as good. And then to match the existing height of the wall, I had to have a pretty tight gap on these 2 top caps. So I just used some liquid nails and then used some wet mortar just to fill in the gaps to match the height of the existing wall. So in the next video, guys, I will be building a gate. I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of that right now. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you on the next one. Have a good one. Later.